Thank you, Janine, for that lovely welcome. I'd firstly like to thank Carolyn Darby, who is a lead member, and she sent me these wonderful articles about the history of Roseville Cinema, which was wonderful because I actually learned a lot of things that I had no idea about the building and some of its past uses. Some I did know, but the most amazing thing I found out was that the building originally was actually only one story. So I didn't know that. Yeah, it was one story in 19 when it was first built, and then converted in the 20s to the size it is now. The front size anyway, not the back size. So the back size I'll talk about later. But yes, so I found that quite interesting, and the fact also that the cinema was originally commissioned by a spinster, as they refer to her in this article, is Nellie Davis, and she actually organised for the building to be built originally, and then it was as a community hall, which is what it was. It was owned by the Creagh Council at the time, and then obviously it had many uses while it was in that hall state, being they're used by ministries as for congregation, and also by the local schools, which were Roseville, which is now known as Roseville College, and also there was another school on Shirley Road called, sorry, I can't proceed that. And then apparently after that, it was also used, there was two shops. So it was a fruit shop and a confectionery soft drink splendid opening. So, but mainly, of course, it was at that period of time, it was a hall that was used to, it was the first hall in the whole of New South Wales that was used to enlist World War I members. So that it has significant meaning to it, because obviously then they started to show war reels at the hall to obviously engage with the community and make sure that they knew what their boys who'd been enlisted were doing over on the other side of the world. So there's a nice little piece in here about the fact that they used to sing songs, and they actually had a song about Roseville. I won't sing it to you because I cannot sing. So if you would like, I could read it to you, but it's in very old English. So it just says 4 homes are poorer in Roseville, but the country is richer by their example and sacrifice. So, and there was more to it than that, but I think that's the most significant part of the song, that they acknowledge the loss of the boys in this area. So this I actually have in my office, this poster, and as you can see, it just demonstrates how they were enlisted in 1915, and the importance of, obviously, that significance of the building. Don't know why Roseville was chosen as the first place to enlist people for World War I. It seems an odd, area for, especially back then, but that's why I don't know. I'd like to know, because I find it fascinating that it was chosen, but basically it was the first enlistment building for World War I soldiers. So I'll get you to. So, as you can see, as a part of the war reels, the cinema then obviously sort of naturally progressed to showing films, and here's the Prime Minister William Billy, when he was re-elected, he also used the cinema hall for his obviously election campaign. So it obviously has meaning in that sort of area. And there were also protests and rallies organised there. An interesting rally in the hall was one opposing the unfair imposition of New South Wales Railway bylaws on women and the separation of first and second class carriages, which Lady David argued was absurd in a democratic nation. The hall was an important place for special events like that as well. So, as you can see, they had hall dances there, so that obviously is not the cinema, but it's an example of obviously what happened inside. Because there were no real seats there at that time, it was literally a flat wall, so yeah. So this photo, which comes also from the paperwork that Caroline gave, is of the back of Cinema 1 from 1937. Unfortunately, the photo, because it was quite small, you can't see them in the original photo. You can see there's sort of square sound backings on the back of it. So, and that was installed. They were still there before we built the cinema, rebuilt the cinema. I still remember them from my childhood. So I don't know if they were replaced or if that was the existing ones, but there were still these soundboards to help with projection of sound in the formation of the cinema. This is a photo of my father in his father's cinema in Holland. Obviously, they had the cinema prior to the war, but a lot of it was stolen and lost and destroyed. So, but he did learn how to run a projector in 1952, so one of the first projectors around, and yeah. And then my dad, before we owned the cinema, he used to work for Universal and Paramount Pictures, and he would travel around Australia with the stars, and he would put on premieres for all the country and other local cinemas in the area to promote films, and stars would come over to America and he would show them around, and so that was what his background once he got to Australia, or a bit later after he got to Australia. He was only 15 when he first came here, but yeah, that was what he did before we bought the cinema. So this is while he was still working for Universal Studios, and he had he's with Barry Humphries in 1972 at a publicity for a movie that Barry Humphries was in, and my dad's the front person, obviously Barry is the person behind. So from his premieres and things that he used to do for Universal and Paramount, he obviously brought that to the cinema and started having quite elaborate and fancy premieres. Obviously films ran very differently back then. They would last a lot longer because they weren't produced as many as they do now, because it was obviously a lot harder to produce them. But this is actually at the front of the cinema, and he's with Barry Crocker, who came to was a premiere of The Last Emperor. So, once my father passed on, he actually sang at his wake. Barry Crocker, he was quite friendly. So this is from my father when he was working in the industry before we did own the cinema. And it's from Filmways, and he was when he's been working at the time for 30 years in 83. So obviously you saw the photo of him in 1952 from when he was working at my grandfather's cinema in Holland, and it's a nice telegram wishing him well for the rest of, and how they've enjoyed working with him in the industry as a person. So this is a picture in 1974 of the cinema, obviously, and I don't know. Oh no, sorry, that's not 1974. That's when we purchased the cinema. That's, I'd say, in the 80s at one of my father's, probably just a Friday or a Saturday night. You can see just how busy and how full it was. And it would have been my father at the front on the stage, and I'd imagine it was Charles Tuckwell on the organ playing, and it would be one of his, which is the next. And he was the first organist that started working at the cinema, and he they would have slides on the screen so that you could sing along to the songs. Here's another example of one of the premieres that my father did with Gardening in '82, and sort of the decorations and extent that he would get to promote the films. The staff all dressed up in saris, and that's inside. And then this is another example of Pirates of Penzance. Again, the staff dressed up as pirates. And this is an example of the queues that used to occur out front. That go right down this particular one, it goes right down to what's still there is Elderine Restaurant on the other side. So that's a picture of my father in his pirate suit with the house full side at the top, which was quite common in his day and age. And that's another example of a film father with staff all dressed in jockey suits. This is another one of Kept He Might Hear You, and the actors have come to the cinema to meet people in person because it was an Australian film, so they could obviously stay and talk to people and come, just in '83, so. And so this is the premiere of Amadeus. So my father is on the far, then Mrs. Yo, who was the headmistress of Rose College, sorry, my apologies, is in the middle, and then there's John Newcomb on the left of her, and then Mr. Yo, Dr. Yo, I should say, which was Mrs. Yo's husband, and Dr. Yo actually performed surgery on my father's back, so there's a bit of significance there. And he was their head of the spinal unit at RPA. And so a lot of these charity events after that, the funds were raised to go to RPA to help in the spinal unit at the hospital there. And so again, there was an orchestra on the stage for Amadeus. I'm a full orchestra, but a 4 or 5 piece orchestra was there on the stage for the premiere. And again, another picture of the staff dressed in obviously clothes that were fitted. I am aware that a lot of these sort of outfits were hired from the Opera House, so that was how, they're quite elaborate and beautifully made, because they're all ones that the Opera House people use, so it's very nice. And this is a photo of the queues for Amadeus. So this is the opposite direction going back. And again, that queue ended at what is now known as Cafe Salute. So at the time, Cinema 1, the main cinema, was 500 seats. So filling up 500 seats is quite an achievement, really. So yeah, on a regular basis as well. This is a poster of The Last Emperor, which we also had this premiere of. And in this poster you can see my father had changed the front awning and put all elaborate Chinese ornaments. This is actually one of the Chinese sort of, not sure of what kind, but it was basically on the Pacific Highway. So on the laneway he had the Pacific Highway closed off, which I don't think he could do anymore in '87, but he got it done. A lane shut on '87. So this boat he basically put right in front of the cinema. And I don't think this photo, but there are other photos where there were searchlights, big old-fashioned lights. And he also this is also on the Pacific Highway, the dragons. He had them running along the highway and inside the cinema and for the last Edinburgh premiere. And yeah, that's a bit of a photo of the boat that's on the highway. So that actually occurs, if you like. So yeah. And yeah, so that's the dragon on the highway. And this is coming down inside the cinema. And so this is a photo of when we twinned. So in 1995, we put the second screen on top. And so that is the smaller cinema now. So the bigger cinema had to be reduced to accommodate the smaller cinema. So that's what Cinema 2 now looks like, which is directly above on top. And it retains obviously the same sort of features that Cinema 1 does, so that it retains that sort of period piece. Yes, yes. This we've actually had as a result. I've even had a wake at the cinema recently because both husband and wife used to come here all the time. So the husband had passed for about 3 years ago, and the wife recently passed. And so the children wanted to remember them in an environment where they used to come and enjoy their company together. And so they had a wake at the cinema and they showed, obviously, they could project photos and things like that on there. So, yeah, and other people always told me. So, yeah. And that's just an example of our website and the kinds of films we do show that obviously are house in range and as well as sort of special special interests like Michelangelo. And that's why I go to the movies every day.